FERS retirement for dummies. In this video, I want to go over the basics of a FERS retirement and how somebody could leverage this to make sure that they're creating a successful retirement when they do know their ideal retirement date, and how to make sure that they're avoiding the most common mistakes when somebody is utilizing the FERS retirement in the wrong way. So the typical situation with the FERS retirement is somebody just gets deemed retired. They hit, let's say, age 65 as an example. They've been working for the federal government for X amount of years, and they say, okay, now I want to, ride off into the sunset. I no longer want to work, but I want to collect all the benefits that I've accrued throughout this time frame. So the first aspect is they're going to be offered a pension plan. They could take this pension plan, they could do a single life income, they could do a joint life income, they could do a period certain with a reduced benefit. So what a pension plan is a defined benefit plan where the government was putting monies aside, and they're going to define exactly how much this individual and their spouse are going to receive every single month to the day that they pass away, depending upon which option that they went with. So this is a lifetime income stream, makes things very easy for the employee, for the beneficiary of this, because they know, okay, as long as I worked X amount of years of service, as long as I hit this age, there's going to be, X amount of dollars that are going to be coming to me on a monthly basis. Lifetime income. The next portion is going to be Social Security income. So Social Security income, you could take it as early as age 62. You could take it as late as age 70. So if, let's say, somebody is age 65, and maybe they may be, receiving $60,000 from their pension portion of the FERS retirement, and then they're also collecting another $20,000 from Social Security income, this would already be $80,000 of cash flow that's coming to this individual, coming to this family every single year to the day that one passes away, or if it's joint life, then that individual and their spouse pass away. Now, this third component is really neat, and this is really why you might have referred to this as the three-legged stool, is because it's giving this federal employee these three main benefits. This last piece, kind of think of it like a 401k account. So it's an employer-sponsored retirement plan. It's a defined contribution plan. It's not a defined benefit plan. So basically, how this thrift savings plan works is, as the individual was working for the federal government, they were able to put monies aside. So this is the TSP account value formula. It really just breaks down to the contributions that someone placed in there, and then the rate of return that they receive back, and then that's what's going to grow this bucket or make this bucket smaller. So let's say if somebody's making $100,000 in a given year, and they decide to put 10% of their money into this thrift savings plan, that's going to be $10,000 that they placed into that thrift savings plan for that year. There's an employer match with this thrift savings plan. So be mindful that when you're reviewing this video, it might be different. They might reduce this dollar amount that they're putting for the thrift savings plan. But what typically used to work with the thrift savings plan was the federal government would match this person up to their first 3%, and then they would give them a 50% match up to the next 2%. So what exactly does that mean? That means if this person's making $100,000 in a given year, in an example, and they put $3,000 of their contributions into this thrift savings plan, then the federal government would also put $3,000, and that would be a 100% match up to that 3%, up to that $3,000. So that would say, okay, $6,000 total is going into this bucket on a contribution side. If, let's say, we're using the example where this person they're making $100,000, they put $10,000 of their monies into the thrift savings plan. Well, we know for the first 3%, they're going to give $3,000. For the remaining 2%, for the next 2%, they're only going to give 50% of that, or it'll be $1,000. So that means that this person placed in $10,000 of a contribution on their own, the federal government is also going to be putting in $4,000 of contribution. So therefore, for just that 1 year, you would have $14,000 that's going into this bucket on the contribution side. So that's equivalent to having, a bucket and basically dumping $14,000 into that bucket every single year, if we're using that example every single year. Now, the other side of the coin, which is usually overlooked, is this rate of return side. This rate of return side is going to be based upon the different investment options that this individual chooses and the performance of those investment options. So this could either be positive or it could be negative. So let's say if somebody had $1 million that was sitting in their savings plan account, and they're no longer adding contributions into this account, or let's just say they already added contributions for that year, but then the performance of this account dropped by 10%, this would be equivalent to someone taking a sword, slicing the bucket, and $100,000 was a loss on this bucket. So it didn't matter how much money they placed in there that year, because this rate of return came back negative. Well, then that was a negative, that was a negative effect to this bucket. Now on the other side, contrary to that, let's say if there was a positive 10%. So there was $1 million sitting into this retirement account, into this thrift savings plan, and there was a positive 10% that occurred off of the different investment choices that this person chose within their thrift savings plan. Well, then that would be equivalent to somebody adding $100,000 into this bucket. So, when it comes time for retirement and really retirement planning, this is where this rate of return side is crucial, because when the person is no longer working for the federal government, they are no longer making contributions to this plan. So this positive that's constantly being placed into this bucket, that no longer exists. And now they have to rely solely on this performance side and hope that the market's going to be good to them if they're just leveraging, the stock market. So if they're leveraging like a C fund, or they're leveraging an I fund or an S fund or whatever that is, within their savings, their savings plan, they're really subject to however well the performance of those funds, do partake. So I hope that this first portion makes sense. The first leg is going to be pension. That's obviously a pension benefit, giving lifetime income, giving you a defined benefit on what your retirement income will be. Social Security income is what you've obviously paid into. So you could go, if you're looking to retire at age 62 or 65 or 70 or whatever that case is, the longer that you wait to trigger Social Security income, the more that amount would be. Just like the pension plan. Let's say if you try to trigger your pension plan and you work for 25 years of service versus if you work for, 32 years of service or 30 years of service, that will obviously accrue higher benefits and a higher calculation off of what your pension payment will be. And this last portion is more the flexibility. Think of it as just an additional account that you could utilize for your retirement planning needs and making sure that you're customizing it accordingly. The reason why I said to conceptualize it like a 401k is an employer-sponsored retirement plan that is offered for private entities. So an employee that's working for a private institution as opposed to a thrift savings plan, which is a type of employer-sponsored retirement plan that is for a federal employee. So basically a federal entity. So that's the major difference between those two. But if you kind of understand, if you've been familiarized with 401ks, that's a really easy comprehension on how to understand how the TSP works. Now, everything with this sounds fantastic. What are some of the problems here? And the first problem that we see time and time again is not having a strategy to leverage your thrift savings plan. So we know that this is really your flexible bucket, not having a proper strategy to leverage this for successful retirement. So the first thing is, as you're nearing up for retirement, whether you're currently retired, you're a couple of years out from retirement, there should be some sort of strategy, so some sort of plan, and you should have some sort of goal in mind on what you see as your ideal retirement, future. So does that mean, okay, right when you call it quits, right when you retire, you want to travel for the first 5 years, next 10 years, whatever that is? Do you want to slowly reduce that travel? Do you want to go visit grandkids? Do you want to, purchase a big home? Do you want to reduce the size of your home? What is your ideal retirement scenario? And then it just comes down to the math and science behind everything. As I mentioned, with how the thrift savings plan account value works is by contributions that someone's placing into the plan and the rate of return. Well, when they're no longer working for the federal government, they're no longer making contributions into this plan. So then this side stops, and now they have to rely solely on this rate of return side. So that means relying on the performance. So think of these as eggs in your basket to choose. With a typical thrift savings plan, you'll have anywhere between 10 to 20 different options to choose from. So there's not a lot of options there. When somebody is eligible, so that means if they get deemed retired or they hit a specific age, so like an age-based in-service withdrawal, they could take this thrift savings plan and they could roll it over into an IRA account. The reason why somebody would do that is based upon the customization. So let's say if they want to try to, the main purpose of this thrift savings plan money was to get a better performance, get a higher rate of return. Why would they leave themselves subject to these 10 to 20 different eggs in their basket when they do this in an IRA? They could have anywhere between 5,000 to 6,000 eggs in their basket to choose from. So because this, in a typical sense, if somebody has a traditional thrift savings plan, what they would do is roll this over into a traditional IRA. It's keeping it from a qualified retirement account, and it's transferring that, or known as rolling over it, into a qualified retirement account. So you're not getting taxed by rolling over those monies, and now it's basically sitting in an IRA chassis that the IRA is going to grow by the same sort of concept, contributions and rate of return. The IRA, if they're doing the rollover, there's no contributions that the person's making, placing in there, because now they're trying to rely on this for some sort of income or some sort of growth. So now they're saying, okay, well, let me now cherry pick my options. Let me go with something that will have higher quality, potentially lower cost, even though the cost within a TSP plan is pretty good with those low cost related options. It's just you're only subject to those 10 to 20 different eggs in your basket to choose from. So would you rather have something that limits the amount of eggs in there, or would you rather have something that will give you a whole multitude of different things in there? Also, when you go and you do that rollover into an IRA, you could customize this into a whole slew of different ways. Based upon what your retirement situation is and based upon what your gaps are, there are specific strategies and different acronyms that I like to explain to individuals with how to create some sort of formula, how to create some sort of strategy to make sure you're optimizing your key areas within your FERS retirement. So I hope that makes sense. With at least the first problem is, from a growth perspective, you could have something that will give you, a lot better customization options. Even for an income perspective, same thing. If you want to leave some sort of legacy, same thing. So it really just depends upon your situation, and really comes down to your budgeting analysis on what would create a proper plan versus just shooting from the hip and not knowing how to properly retire. Also, another thing that's constantly overlooked is choosing the wrong pension option. So this is something that I always use the example of my grandfather. My grandfather didn't work for the federal government. My grandfather worked for the city of New York. He was an elevator mechanic for the city of New York, and he was offered a pension plan through his municipality. So with the pension plan, he almost made the mistake that as he was walking out the door because he was filling in his paperwork to retire, my grandmother stopped him and said, what's in your hand? Oh, I just filled out the pension option. I chose the single life option because it's going to give me that much more income. They got into a huge fight because she wanted to make sure that she was covered, God forbid, if he passed away prematurely. Well, unfortunately, my grandfather did pass away prematurely. He only was retired for a few years. He ended up dying at age 69, and him and my grandmother were only about a year apart from each other. She ended up living until her mid-80s. So in that situation, it was a blessing that she stopped him at that exact moment, because instead of taking that single life pension option, they chose the joint life option. So there was a slight reduced benefit with that pension option, but it worked out mathematically appropriate for their situation, because as he passed away, the income did not stop. The income kept coming to her every single year to the day that she passed away. There's different things you could leverage, something known as pension maximization strategies, where somebody could always take the single life option, because that's going to be a higher income amount, because obviously the risk to the government standpoint is saying, okay, we're only covering one life, so maybe they would give a single life income option of $60,000 per year versus a joint life option of $40,000 per year. Someone could leverage a max pension option where they take the $60,000 portion, and then let's say they take $10,000 per year and they purchase a life insurance policy on that single individual for $500,000. The reason why somebody would do this is if they take the $60,000 option, but they're taking $10,000 of that $60,000 to purchase the life insurance policy, this couple is still netting $50,000 of income, which is $10,000 higher than the joint life option. They keep living and living and living and living and living. Let's say if that spouse passes away before the individual that's covered on the single life, then all he does is he or she stops paying for the life insurance policy, and now they step up in income at that point in time. Or if, let's say, the single individual passes away, well, now the surviving spouse in this example has $500,000 of a tax-free death benefit that's left over to them, and they're able to now reap the benefits of it. So they're able to reap the benefits and see if it's mathematically appropriate. Sometimes using the pension maximization strategy makes sense, and you're able to arbitrage your dollars and utilize the law of large numbers and utilize a life insurance play on that. And other times it doesn't make mathematical sense. So it really just depends upon what those numbers do look like, and what the variance is between the single life and the joint life option on the pension plan. So what are some solutions, and how do you know whether or not you're creating an effective strategy? And this is something that we've deemed the acronym, we've actually trademarked this process, known as the retirement diet plan. So with any sort of retirement situation, we want to make sure that all these different bases are covered, and this is what could create a successful retirement. And the first step comes down to distribution. in order to create an effective distribution strategy, you have to know what your expenses are now, and then also what your expenses are going to be throughout retirement. So ideally, when you're looking at your 30,000 foot view with your retirement situation, let's say if somebody is age 65, well, maybe their retirement, ideal lifestyle in retirement is saying, okay, from age 65 to age 70, me and my spouse want to travel the world. We want to spend as much money as possible in these first 5 years, and then start to reduce this after 5 years of travel, and then maybe from ages 70 to age 75 we're going to slow down a little bit. Then from age 75 until date of death, we really want to not do that much travel, or not really visit the grandkids, and just kind of stay at home, and just kind of stick with more hobbies that are local. So each situation is going to be different with this, but understanding what your overall picture is, and then also what the budgeting analysis is on this. So we set up different budgeting analysis, different expense reports to help you understand, okay, how much are your expenses? What is that number of expenses? And then if you're a FERS employee, if you're offered the FERS retirement, what is your pension income? What is your social security income going to be at this ideal retirement date? And then ultimately, is there a gap within this? So as an example, let's say if you understand that you need to, receive, you have $100,000 of expenses, you and your spouse have $100,000 of expenses, and we just say that the pension income is going to be $60,000, Social Security income is going to be for another $20,000. Well, this tells us, okay, this is $80,000 of some sort of guaranteed cash flow, but you're falling short off of what you ideally want to see as your ideal retirement of $20,000. So this is where somebody could leverage their savings plan and take a portion of these dollars and create some sort of proper distribution strategy, and leveraging a customized IRA account. This is where an annuity would come into play, and not so much leveraging the annuity options that are set up through the federal government, because that's really only one choice. You only really typically have it with one insurance company. I'm talking about leveraging a multitude of options. So you have typically about 1,000 to 1,100 different options when it does come to this lifetime cash flow play, when you're leveraging insurance companies and trying to create some sort of longevity insurance, making sure you're not going to outlive your monies. So the reason why this is important is, let's say if your gap is $20,000 per year in this example, and you have an additional $600,000 that's sitting in your thrift savings plan, well, maybe it might only cost you $250,000 that you're placing with the top IRA account that's going to produce you a lifetime income stream, either you or you and your spouse, a lifetime income stream of this $20,000. So in this example, let me clear off the screen. We understand that the pension income stream is going to be bringing in $60,000. Social Security income stream is going to be bringing in $20,000. You have a need of $100,000 per year, so you have a gap of $20,000 that you need to suffice. Out of the $600,000 through savings plan, you could take this through savings plan money, roll over a portion of it. Maybe if it mathematically comes back at $250,000, well, now you still have $350,000 remaining in your thrift savings plan bucket. So if your distribution strategy is already covered, because now you have lifetime income streams, some guaranteed cash flows that are set up between the pension, the Social Security income, and like an IRA hybrid annuity as an example, well, now you have this $350,000 that you can move on to step two. Step two is going to be the investment/growth growth related need. So as $350,000, maybe you just want to keep pace with inflation, or just use it as an additional splurge account. And maybe out of this portion, you want to leverage $250,000 into investments. You could leave the $250,000 in the thrift savings plan if you like those different funds, but be mindful, you're subject to only those 10 to 20 different eggs in your basket to choose. So this is where somebody could say, okay, well, let me leverage different investments over here and roll those monies over into a new customized IRA that's leveraging a combination of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, whatever that case might be, to make sure that this is more mathematically appropriate. So now you have one IRA that's set up for $250,000. You have another IRA that's set up for $250,000. This is more set up for the growth play. And now you have $100,000 left over to create some sort of, estate/legacy play if that's important to you. So maybe, you want to leave beneficiaries $100,000, or you want to leave, $100,000 account, and you want to try to maximize this out the proper way. There's ways on how you can leverage this $100,000 and make sure that you're arbitraging these dollars to, generate more of a death benefit, to your loved ones. So that's ways on how you can leverage life insurance policies. That's ways on how you could put them into certain guaranteed death benefit related accounts. So, this would more, play into the role of the estate/legacy play. And then lastly would be taxation, making sure that everything is most tax efficient, most tax appropriate. That might mean doing, conversions into Roth IRA accounts from the TSP. So there's a whole multitude of different things. But really, if you stay within those four main quadrants, you just want to make sure that things are being maximized, and being optimized towards that specific strategy, and you're not trying to use a jack of all trades type product. So if you're trying to shoot from the hip, someone would say, okay, I have my 600,000 that's sitting here. Let me just go and throw those monies into investments and hope that I'm just going to, start pulling monies from these accounts that will suffice that $20,000 need. Investments are a sort of growth strategy. Investments are necessary when you're trying to grow and accumulate your wealth, but not, and also when you're trying to, maintain that accumulation, but not so much. It's not an effective route if you're trying to utilize that for a distribution strategy. So this is where you would leverage the proper distribution accounts for this. And same thing, you would not leverage distribution related accounts or safe accumulation accounts if you want to be very aggressive and you want to have max growth plays. This is where you'd leverage the investment portions in there. Same thing for the estate legacy play. If you want to make sure that you're leaving monies aside and that's setting up for a proper legacy, that you're leaving a proper death benefit to loved ones, you want to make sure that's set up with the correct strategy, the correct account. So you're not commingling all these different, you're not trying to say, okay, let's just go and throw it into one type of account and hope that it's going to do all these different jobs. You want to make sure that everything is maximized to the 10th degree. So it kind of looks like a perfect, puzzle piece. One set up for income or distribution, the other set up for, investment/growth, the other set up for, some sort of legacy or estate related, legacy play, the other set up for, if you want to be most tax efficient or utilize a portion of dollars to pay the taxes if you're doing these types of conversions in there. So there's a whole really, neat sort of strategies in there to make sure that you could, use your chips the correct way. So I hope that all this made sense. If you found value in this video, feel free to call our 1-800 number at the top of the screen, 1-800-566-1002, or you can always visit our website, retiresharp.com, or it's fossyfinancial.com. It's the URL. The link is going to be in the description of this video, and that's where you can go to the website. You can scroll all the way down. There's also be a little pop-up calendar that will come up if you want to set up a most convenient time for you. But obviously scroll down to the bottom and you can set a calendar appointment that way. We could do it through phone conversation. This basically shows the different steps of the retirement diet plan, making sure that if you learn better through literature, you learn better through personalized videos. That's ultimately how we make sure that the comprehension is key and you're confident with your retirement, with your retirement plan from start to finish. So, once again, if you found value in this video, feel free to reach out to us. If not, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Retire Sharp, so you can have access to the most updated videos. Thanks so much, guys.